Imagine this: you've hired your first few employees and you have a small team, and everything is going great. And then you start to notice performance dips. And you're wondering, how do I manage performance without an in house HR team? Well, the good news is you're in the right place. Hi, welcome to the sixth episode of Unlock HR with the D'Souza sisters. I'm Desma D'Souza.
And I'm Elrona Silva D'Souza.
And today, we're going to talk about how small businesses can implement robust performance management systems to help you get the best performance from your team. So let's get started, shall we?
Let's do it.
So, performance management isn't just about evaluating employees, right? It's about helping them grow and succeed. That will ultimately help your business thrive.
Correct. You are spot on that. So, performance is not about evaluation, it's about having the right conversation. And that conversation is what drives a change in outcome or change in behavior that helps the business. So, it's not an event also that you do it once and that's your job done. It is a journey and it is a cycle. There's activities to be done throughout maybe a whole year or a certain period of time, but it is not a momentary like how are you doing and you have that check and that's it.
Yeah.
To keep performance and to help employees and to bring out the best in the employees, you have to have the right conversation as their line manager or as the business owner that manages the team to bring out the best in them.
Yeah. So, as a small business owner, then, what can they do to bring this performance culture into the organization? How does one go about creating performance management framework?
Okay. So, first things to do when you start performance management is to see whether you have your basics right. So, and by basics, what I mean is, does every employee in the organization have a job description that clears out what their roles are? So, once you have that, then you're ready to start performance management. And to start, we talked about the difference between performance appraisal and performance management. It's a great place to start to introduce the concept of performance is to have performance appraisals. It's simple to implement, easy to adopt into, and then that will set the right standard for you to grow into a bigger performance framework. So once you do that and you've developed a performance culture, then the performance framework comes into play. And this performance framework has key points to remember. It's where you start with by setting objectives for each individual employee that connects them to the organization's output. Now, through a vision or something that you set as a strategy to say, we are going to grow by X or we are going to introduce this product. And how does the rest of the team work towards it?
Right.
So that's how it starts with, right?
Setting
objectives is the first step.
So setting objectives is, so the objectives are set based on the broader vision or of the organization.
Yes.
So it kind of stems from that.
Correct.
Okay.
So once you've done that, so the broader vision and once you've set the objectives, then it's about working towards achieving those objectives. And one of the key concepts that we always talk about is when you're setting objectives is to make them SMART. And the SMART acronym is basically make them very specific, make sure that you can measure them, that they are achievable within the constraints of that year and that, as well as it has to be realistic. Like, is this really something that an employee can achieve? Have you given this person the right tools? And it has to be time bound. So I wouldn't always recommend that the objective starts at the beginning of the year and ends at the end of the year. It could have a shorter time frame. And once that objective is done, then, you move on to the next objective. So all of these parts need to comprise when you create those objectives. So setting objectives using the SMART criteria is the best way to start.
Okay. And so before we go into the next phase, right, let's just paint a picture of what are the different elements included in creating a performance management framework.
Yeah.
So you have the year, you said use.
Correct. So you have a full year, like you have what we call as a performance year, which could be aligned to the year that you use for your business. So whether you use the calendar year, which is Jan to December, where you do your P&L at the end of the year, so you can follow the same timelines. Or some schools, for instance, have the academic year, so they probably want to use that. So whatever the business financial year is, that's what also is the recommended performance year.
Yeah.
So throughout the year, you want to set key instances or events in that year to complete the framework. So you start with setting objectives, and then what you do is have feedback sessions or review sessions as to
Right.
how employees are doing against those objectives.
Right.
And there are many different models of performance management, and the most recent one that is very simple enough to adopt is called continuous performance management.
Yeah.
So you don't have to wait necessarily for the end of a quarter or a mid-year mark. You have regular conversations and keep it moving, especially when you have the younger population like the millennials and the Gen Zs.
Millennials are not younger population anymore, unfortunately.
Yes, that is true, actually. Yeah. The Gen
mean
Alpha is now back
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
play, right? So, okay. But millennials have kind of changed the way they expect feedback. So, prior to that, there was a acceptance that you could have performance. You didn't have to give feedback in real time. But from millennials, there's a lot of real time expectations
Yeah.
in terms of performance. So that's where the continuous performance comes through. So if people, that's something you can develop, so you're not having to plan every time these review sessions, and you keep them ongoing. So that way you record your performance. We talked about one-to-one sessions in our podcast before to help line managers. Use those one-to-ones to talk about performance as well. And then capture that information and see how progress is doing. Mainly because you want the employee to succeed, right? So if there are any obstacles or if there are tools or, assistance that they need, you can provide that to the employees as well. So continuous performance is quite effective for small businesses because there's less execution around it. Then, so either you can do continuous performance or you can have set time periods for having performance. So like a quarterly review or a mid-year review, and then you have a year-end review as well. So these are the other events that happen in the performance cycle.
Yeah. So if I summarize what you've said so far, a performance management, as part of the performance process, you have a cycle. So you identify what your cycle is.
Correct.
It can be Jan to December or your financial year.
Yes.
Or what year you use to manage your business. You then start the cycle with setting objectives.
Correct.
And that is usually done in line with what the role, as well as how objectives are set connected to the vision of the organization.
Correct.
It is encouraged to do reviews or in real time. So you give feedback in real time, or you can identify, multiple time events within that cycle to have performance reviews. So that can be like every 6 months or every quarter.
Yes. And to help you with the whole process, there are, you can either do it on a form or you can do it on a system. But essentially what's important is to set this first before you go out and look for a system or develop a form. Once you have this in place, you develop a form to help, or the system to help you with this.
Yeah. Again, with the whole performance management framework, right? Again, like you said earlier, it's great to have, but the most important part is not the cycle, not the forms, not the systems. It is the conversation.
Exactly.
It's the conversation that line managers and employees have that, and the real-time element of that is so that they can change behaviors if needed or reinforce behaviors if it's good performance in real time. So building on that, right, what's a good way to give constructive feedback?
So when it comes to constructive feedback, it's hard to give and it's hard to receive. So both parties have to learn how to engage in this conversation that they can, both get the best out of it.
Yeah.
So there are models that we advocate for companies and line managers to help them, have these sort of conversations wherein you keep the emotions, out, you keep them out and you stay objective. So one of the models that we teach line managers through performance management trainings is called the SPCI model. Basically, what it does is it takes a situation and breaks it down.
Yeah.
So you take the situation, you understand what was the behavior that caused that situation to arise, and what should that person change and continue, and what was the impact. So there are ways to like open that conversation, saying during this meeting, I noticed that you were X.
So focus on the behavior, not on the person.
Correct. So it's not personal, it's about getting the best out of that person. So focus on the behavior that needs to either change or that needs to continue.
Yeah.
So that's why we teach this model, or we encourage all of y'all to look it up, the SPCI model, which will help you, as a line manager, prepare for these sort of one-to-one constructive feedback sessions.
Yeah. We can do a separate episode, or rather separate video on the SPC model.
Yes.
Drop us a comment if this is something that you would find helpful. I think another thing that's really important, right, is I know performance management is between, managers giving feedback to employees, but I also think sometimes, at least in my case, I always went and asked for feedback from my managers, even if it was outside the designated performance cycle, because I was interested in, how something went and what could I have done differently. Or if they said, you've done a great job, I always ask, like, what actually from this was really good. Or if they say, if there was a new project assigned to me or something, or a new initiative that I worked on, I would always go in and ask for feedback. And this made me come across as being very proactive, which was great for my career because I got new opportunities. So I think employees also need to keep in mind that it's not just a one-sided top-down kind of conversation. It's a conversation, and that means two people are involved.
You're absolutely right. One of the main pillars of performance is that performance is not driven from the top. Performance is owned by the employee themselves. They have to own their performance, and that's the only way this performance structure, the framework that we talked about, will succeed. As much as you would impose this system on an employee, if they embrace it and they use this for their benefit, this is what happens. Like, you get opportunities, you grow, and you evolve as an employee as well, and you develop yourself, right? So that's very important, that performance is owned by the employee. And the more they ask for feedback, the more opportunities will come for them to improve their skills and increase their competence and their capability. But it's also important that while you ask for this feedback, you might not always get praise. So it's not always like you're doing a good job, or, like, keep going, great work. Because
be open.
You have to be open to get constructive feedback that this manager is going to, use the SPCI model and give you. But you have to be open to listening to it and take it with an open mind that this is going to benefit me. It's not you that they're talking about, it's you,
your performance
in that role that you're performing. So you have to disconnect yourself and not take it personally, because this is the way it will help your career. And being open, being attentive, not being very defensive are some things that we always train employees on, so that they can get the best out of the feedback they receive.
Great. So let's jump into what we normally do, right? Red flags, green flags. So let's talk about, like, maybe 5 red flags between the two of us, and then 5 green flags in terms of how to get the best performance out of your employees.
So we start with the red flags? Okay.
Why not?
So for me, one of the things is performance is not an exercise that is on paper. You have to live the performance. It has to be a live, dynamic sort of model. So if you've written this at the beginning of the year, don't just evaluate it when it is the evaluation time. Like, keep it live, keep it going, keep working towards it. Develop some sort of a journal to write all your accomplishments. And similarly, I always tell this to line managers as well. Constantly, take down notes and watch and look after your employees and make sure that they are achieving these objectives. Keep it on top of their mind as well when you have these meetings. So that way they know that you are also, equally invested in it.
I think, another red flag is if a performance, like the performance process is just like a one-time event and it's not continuous. So that continuous conversation is really key to making sure that it is, they say it's like a living process. it's working all the time.
Yes. Performance, and some things that need to be done is like when you're talking about performance, it is to keep what is it that you're trying to achieve from this. You always keep that. Oftentimes people think like they're doing this just to complete an HR process, or this is on top of everything that I have to do. No, this is what's going to help you do all the other things better.
Yeah.
So your orientation and your outlook has to change. And
Yeah.
that sometimes is the resistance that I have seen in organizations.
Another red flag, I don't know if it's a red flag, but it's also like the mindset towards performance.
Yeah.
If you think about the performance as, oh God, this is something else I have to do, and don't understand the value of it, then you're not really getting any value from it. Instead, what would be a great a change in mindset is to sort of leverage this process to make sure that you are continuing to promote good behavior, and also change behavior that is not in line with what you want to achieve the objectives of the company.
It's the best vehicle at the moment. I know performance in many organizations have reached a cycle that people are so self-driven that performance is not necessary in that organization. But that's not the case for all organizations. So performance is still here and still has its benefits, provided you have the right mindset.
Yeah. Another red flag is when people think performance is system. It's not about the system. It has nothing to do with the system. The system is just like any system. It's a way to record the information.
Exactly.
Right?
It's a tool. It's not what drives your performance. Performance is driven by the individuals in the organization on that framework that we talked about.
Yeah. Okay, so let's switch to the green flags, which is actually what I prefer talking about. We should have probably started with the green flags. So my green flag number 1 is performance will be successful, or performance management will be successful when we've already spoken about this, continuous conversation.
Yes. And so that's definitely the case. Like there's nothing better than having real conversations about real performance in real time. The other thing that helps performance is when employees own it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times employees have asked for it, then you have a better success of it. So create that need and that, and listen to your employees while developing the performance management as well.
I just thought of a red flag. I'm thinking in opposite, but anyways.
Going back and forth.
Red flag, another one is if you don't have clear job descriptions.
Yes.
We cannot like sort of insist this enough, right? If you're not clear on the basics of what you're expected to do on your role, the fact that the chances that you can then measure the output becomes...
Yeah, we talk
doesn't
about...
really add value.
What KPIs are you going to set? And this is another thing that performance talks about. Everybody wants to associate KPIs to an objective. But if you don't know your job description, you don't know what key performance you're going to measure.
Yeah.
So it's quite important. It's the bedrock of the performance is to have a job description.
Yeah, absolutely. Another, I don't know if the word is a green flag, but what is really important is the communication around performance to sort of educate both line managers and employees on why you need to have this in place and what's the benefit to them. It's not just, oh, here's an HR process that we need to bring into the business. Like they should feel that as a reason of having these conversations with my line manager, I'm now able to perform better.
I think performance works the best when it's associated with development.
Yeah.
Performance gives you the right idea of how to develop your organization, because you have collective data and collective knowledge about where are the key points. So if you're talking about performance and everybody has a gap in this, and that's what you focus on your development. You also find out who are your star performers and who need help.
Yeah.
So, you get to know your organization and the people better through a very structured, unbiased way. And that's something that, you can build and grow your business with.
Absolutely. Right. I think we've covered a lot on performance management. I feel like I've said the word performance too many times.
We've also thrown in quite a few acronyms and I hopefully broke that down and simplified it for folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there anything that we didn't cover, you reckon?
One of the things that people do is what happens at the end of the year when it comes to the results of performance, and what happens to the ratings, the big ratings that we talk about.
That's a really important one, the rating.
So a lot of ratings have, everybody somehow only remembers one sort of rating, which is the forced ranking and so on, where people are rated, to be top or poor, and everything in the middle is just
Average.
average. That's not the case. So the rating is supposed to help you find who is meeting the expectations of the role primarily, so that you know that you have a solid team that's working to deliver what is expected of them. There will always be star performers that you can then develop further and use them to grow your organization. You can, be they might be the ones that succeed some of the line managers and so on. So it's never about finding who is your poor performer. It is to find who are your strong performers, and your strong performers are the ones that generally fall in the middle of the rating. And there are lots of different ratings out there. You have the 5 ratings, you have the 3 ratings, you have the 4 ratings, and each have their own benefits. And you kind of, when you're developing this framework, that's something you need to look at, is what rating works for your business. And if there is, a rating that you use somewhere else for some other evaluation, let's say for interviews and stuff, bring something that is familiar to them.
Yeah, makes sense. All right.
We're done.
I think now we're done. Right. So that's a wrap for this episode on performance management. I know, and we know, that there's so much more to cover in this space. So if you have any specific questions, please pop them in the comments below, and we'll definitely keep them in mind when we're planning future episodes. If you haven't already, I would like to invite you now to like, share, and subscribe to this channel, because we are planning a lot of new relevant content in the coming weeks. Also, thank you so much for spending this time with us. See you in the next episode, which is also our season finale.
Ciao.
Ciao. As we wrap up today's episode, we want to extend a huge thank you to our sponsor, Pacific Prime Insurance Brokers. With 19 offices globally, Pacific Prime are an award-winning, trusted insurance partner for businesses and individuals requiring any type of insurance solution. They specialize in providing unbiased and reliable insurance advice to simplify your process of finding the right insurance solutions for your business and your employees. So whether you need comprehensive medical coverage or any other insurance solution, their 150-member team in Dubai alone are always ready to assist you. You can check the show notes below for a link to their website and a dedicated email address just for you to reach out to them.